Well, it's been a week since my last video or so when I mentioned that Elddis were looking at stopping selling caravans. Now, just to point out that some people have mentioned that it hasn't actually been said that's what they're doing, and that is correct. So it sounds like there may well be a consultation in April, I think. I'd heard that they were making the final decision, but the very fact that it wasn't mentioned in any of the press releases or in any of the press would indicate that the very fact that there was a lack of any information coming out of the factory saying we're going to carry on selling producing caravans at the factory, or we're moving into the UK, to Europe, would indicate that the very fact that there was no mention of them would kind of tell you that they're not going to carry on doing them. I don't know, they may well do, and the decision may not have actually been finalized yet, but if it had been, I would have thought it would have been in that press release. So we can only assume that's what's going to happen. And over the last week or so, and looking at the comments that you've been putting on the previous video, it's kind of got me thinking as to why this has kind of come about. And as I alluded to in the previous video, there's several different reasons. But the one thing that surprised me about the comments in the last video, now I was expecting to hear, oh, I bought an X, Y, and Z and it wasn't very good and therefore I'm not going to buy another one. I was fully expecting to hear that, because you always do, and that is one of the main reasons why you wouldn't buy something. I'm certainly the same. If you buy something and it's not very good, then it's very difficult to then go and then buy that product again. And I know people do, they give the benefit of the doubt to the manufacturers and they buy it again. Maybe it's a dealership that's easy to use and close to you that sell that product, so it's easier to do that rather than go from another product. And also you can then read about other products, and you can find out that they have issues as well. So there is all that into it. But what did surprise me is, I think the mountain that the manufacturers have actually got to climb to recoup those customers. Because again, what surprised me was the fact that someone had said that they bought a caravan in 2013 and it was an Elddis and it had issues, so therefore they're never going to buy another one. So it was how far back people will cling on to that notion that they bought something and it didn't do what they wanted it to do, so therefore they're not going to do it again. And then I kind of thought, well, actually, why would time be a healer for that? Because if once stung, twice shy, whatever the thing is that you say, once bitten, twice shy, sorry. So that's, I think, where the manufacturers have probably got the biggest issue, is trying to recoup the customers that they've lost in previous years. Now, I was expecting to hear quite a few people saying I bought one in 16, 17, 18 and had issues with it because of the horrible situation where the panels were only warranted for a year and then they would crack and it was £4,500 to replace one. Now, to me, that was commercial suicide, and whoever was responsible for that, I think, has long gone, by the way, by the sounds of it. And also that was just, I mean, like I say, commercial suicide as far as I'm concerned. You can't put a product out like that and then expect it to be okay to tell your customers that when you're going back and they've got an issue 18 months down the line. So I think that's where the manufacturers have kind of got to try and regain that trust. And as if you've listened to my videos before, it's all about trust. That is the key thing to all of this. If you haven't got the trust in that manufacturer, then you're not going to then go and buy that product again. And I think that is the main issue. Well, it's one of the issues. I'll talk about a few of the other issues in a second as to why I think the caravan industry is struggling still. But I think one of the main issues, and it certainly hasn't helped, is the lack of trust and how far back this may well have started. It may have started, generations ago, pretty much. You can argue that I would have said there's a cut-off line between around about 2010 where the product started to change significantly. So anyone before that would maybe give the new stuff a benefit of the doubt. But anything after that, if you bought a product after 2010 in the new kind of manufacturers kind of gearing up to make products better, in theory, then I think once you have bought a product that was an issue that you had an issue with, I think you're gonna, it's going to be very difficult to overcome that. So what can the manufacturers do about that? Well, this is the frustrating thing about when I heard that Elddis may well be stopping selling caravans, which again might be the case. It might not be. They may not have made a decision. So hopefully, they may well change their mind. I don't know. But the frustrating thing was what I saw at the factory, and the data that I'd seen, and the difference in the people that were there. So I thought they were one of the ones that were going to probably come out of this pretty good because of that data. Now it was so frustrating that I couldn't show you that. It was to do with lots of different things that are well over my head, and probably very valid. But it was frustrating from a kind of a layman's terms, like I am, to see this data that was absolutely, to me, was gold. I mean, it was just absolute. Look, that was the issue back then. And this is the issue now, and this is how we got to it, and this is what's happened in between those times. And And if we do have another issue, this is what we're going to do about it. I mean, to me, it was just, well, yeah, there you go. That's what we've been saying all this time. But all I could do is tell you what I saw, and kind of trying to impart the feeling of optimism going forward, that Elddis product would be good because of the way that ethos was at the factory. Also, going back to the issues that were before, I mean, I don't think I said this before. I haven't mentioned this because I thought it might be liable or there might be an issue. But when I was coming back from the factory the last time, and I was in the taxi going back, I had about a 40-minute ride, and I was speaking to the taxi driver, and he told me that he knew people in the factory, and back in the day, not too long ago, he was in the pub with them, and they were actually telling him how they actually nobbled the caravans because they weren't happy with the leadership and what was going on. I mean, if you've got a workforce like that, then that's just it's game over, isn't it? They're not happy, and they're actually hindering the process by doing these things that is going to not help the manufacturer. Then that's not great, and which is daft because that's hindering their own jobs. I didn't understand it, and it was a second-hand kind of anecdotal thing. But I wondered why someone would say that if it wasn't true. So that was probably again why the change up at the factory was such a big thing, and what I saw there, and the way that the people were up there, it was a kind of a whole feeling that, yes, we're going forward with this and it's going to be really good. And that's why it's frustrating that I think if they do stop selling caravans, I think it's a bit of a loss to the industry because of what they were doing. Having said that, there's lots of other reasons why it might be, it's just not viable to produce caravans, because if you have a look at a shrinking market, you could argue that it's going to keep on shrinking to the point where it's just not worth doing. If you're spending millions of pounds on producing caravans and you're only making 1,000 vans or 1,500 or whatever, and you're not making the money on them, then you think, well, I might as well change what I'm doing and make the workforce do something else, or whatever. There's certainly other things you can do with the business and the factory to make you to make it more viable. It's like what I've done here, and I've said this before. It's got to the point where selling caravans wasn't viable, so I've done something else. You have to make those decisions. So the decline of the caravan industry has got several factors that we all talked about. I mean, one of them is the kind of old guard of my caravan core demographic is getting to the point where they don't want to do it anymore. So a lot of the phone calls I get from my old customers is, look, I've had enough now. I'm selling the caravan. I can't tow it for various reasons. So therefore I want to sell the caravan. So I'm getting quite a lot of those phone calls, but I'm not getting so many people coming into the industry from the kind of the entry level point where they've got a young family and they want to get into it. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does. In fact, last week we did sell a caravan to someone who just started with a family, which was great. And then they create memories for their kids, and then they can maybe do it in the future as well. But I think the net migration out of the industry is on the negative. So you've got more people leaving it than you have coming in. And that's for all the reasons we've stated. Caravan sites being more expensive, just a different trend, different people holidaying in a different way. The thought of actually doing that, and I'm going to say it's peeling down now. That's the other issue we have is, all you need to do is have a few bad summers, and that makes a dent in the in people wanting to go caravan, and they say, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm going abroad. Cost of living, everything like that, everything we know that is being thrown at the caravan industry is adding to the fact that it's reducing in size. And I say I threw the figure out around about 9,000. That's what's been, I've been told. Where does it need to get to the point where it isn't viable for other manufacturers? Is it going to keep shrinking, or is it going to stay around about that 9,000 mark? Now, if Elddis do stop producing caravans, again, like I said in the last video, that's going to add a few more into the pie for the other manufacturers, so make it more viable for them. So it might, hopefully, what I'm hoping is it's going to kind of stabilize around about that. And then Swift and Bailey and Coachman will carry on making the caravans, and they can invest more into it because there's going to be a bigger slice of the pie, and hopefully that pie doesn't reduce any further. So that's what I'm thinking. But like I said, it's a damn shame if they don't carry on making caravans, because I was really happy with what I saw up there and the way that they were doing it. So have a look at my video on when I came back from the factory, because that will talk a little bit more about it. But it's a shame if they do that. But like I said, the other thing I did see around there, and I don't want to start rumours that possibly aren't true, but there was a lot of houses being built around there. So there's a massive factory. I was thinking, well, what I'd do is probably knock everything down and build a lot of houses on it, because of the way that things were moving out around there. So that might be on the cards. I don't know. Yeah, there's probably lots of decisions that still need to be made, but hopefully. I'm hoping that the caravans don't stop, because I really genuinely think that what they were doing there would have been a model for other manufacturers to do, especially that data that I couldn't show you. That was really frustrating. I don't even think the dealers saw it on what was happening at the factory. Just to recap it, when the new people came in, there was about 600 or 700 caravans that came off the line and went into a big field, and they had to come back into the factory again to have things redone, things that are broken, not working, damaged, whatever it happened to be. So of course that costs an absolute fortune to do. You're coming off the line, it's in a field, it's coming back in, it disrupts everything. Then I think the new team came in and said, well, what the hell's going on here? Why is it not being checked on the line so that it gets resolved early on? The earlier in the manufacturing process that things get resolved, the cheaper it is and the better it is. So they looked at all these systems and they put checks in place to kind of rule out what was going on. So there's a check system in place. So right, we've got 30 things or 50, whatever it is, things we have to check. And then when the things stopped being an issue, then it was taken off the checklist. And then so we saw this kind of line going down and to the right, and then sometimes it's peak up, and I said, well, what are those peaks? And the peaks were when someone had mentioned something else. Maybe it was a dealer had said, like, look, this is an issue, we get fed up with it. Maybe it was a customer that had phoned up and said, this is an issue. Maybe it was from the warranty side of things. I don't know what it was, but what we would see was a peak going up when they introduced another tick box for the people on the line to test, and then what would happen is they would find that issue, and it would kind of, more caravans got put out into the field to come back in again because they were checking something else. And then what would happen is when that checkpoint got to a point where it wasn't flagging up anything, because what they'd actually done is fix that problem earlier in the line, so that when it got to the check it wasn't there, then that check box was taken out again, because it was no point checking something that's fixed, and then it would drop again, and you see these spikes where these things are coming in, to the point where at the end of it, where they had 500 or 600, 700 caravans coming off the line in a year to the factory, it came from out of the line into the field back in again, there's 6 caravans that's happened to, and you're going to get that because it's built by humans, and coming down the line with thousands of parts having to be put together in one coherent package. So that was the basis of what I saw, and it was hard evidence, it was hard data that you could actually see. It wasn't just someone saying something, you could see the line of actually, of it actually improving, and that had taken 4 years to happen. So that was absolutely fantastic, but it's no good if the proof is in the pudding and no one wants to buy the pudding because previously the pudding's been terrible. So sorry about that. That's pretty bad, but you get what I mean. It's great doing all these things. And my frustration is, well, you're not telling anyone about this stuff. It might be great in the future, and it might be that someone, reports on it, or says, "Oh God, crikey, Elddis are really good. I haven't had any problems for the past 3 or 4 years." But that's no good if you can't get people to buy it in the first place to actually prove that this has been a thing. And I think that's the main issue, is that all those people that have bought, in the last 15 years that have had issues of A, not going to buy another one, and B, they've told everyone about it as well. So people that are watching my YouTube channel and things like that, and Facebook, so I know I am a part of that. They won't then go on and buy that product because it's too risky, because you're going to look silly if you get caught again. So again, it's down to the manufacturers to try and get it across to say, look, we are changing something. And like I say, I'm unfortunately quite naive in the way that I think, because I don't know the corporate world, but I do know there's things they can't say and do because it opens up a can of worms for litigation and all this kind of stuff. I think if they actually came out and said, yes, we've had this issue and we know we've had it for the past 10 years, I mean, you can imagine what would happen, because you'd have people say, well, if you knew about it, that means we can sue you for it. I don't know. I'm guessing, to be completely honest with that. But you can imagine that's the kind of thing that could happen. To me, if it was me, I would say, look, we've had this issue. Sorry about that. This is what we're doing about it, and this is how we're going to fix it. And then going forward, it isn't going to be an issue anymore, because the person that's had that issue, once and sometimes even twice, in another van, they're not going to try that 3 times. So, and if that product is being built in the same way with that same process, then you can only assume that it's going to happen again. And that's been my biggest bugbear. And I've said this time and time again, you've got 3 years to fix it. You've got an issue, you've got a year to sort it out. You've got another year to think, okay, we didn't quite sort that out right. Year 4, if it's still there, then again, commercial suicide. That's what I think anyway. Yeah, it's a shame if they don't carry on selling caravans, if they do stop. But like I said, it might have just got to this critical point where it's just not viable to do. And the one thing that probably isn't going to happen is I can't ever see the caravan industry getting back up again. I can't see it growing because of the prices, the way they've gone. They've kind of priced themselves out of the core demographic that were buying caravans. 15 years ago when I started here, and before that, you could buy a new caravan for £12,500. You now, obviously it's more than double that, and wages haven't doubled to allow for that. So it has come from a kind of a thing that the masses use to something that is pretty much a purchase that you can only make if you've got significant funds to do it. Now, I'm talking about new. It doesn't mean that the pre-owned market is dead. The only issue with the pre-owned market is that because the new have gone up so much, it's kind of dragged up that pre-owned market price at the same time. So when you look at some of the caravans that are out there that are 10 years old, and you look at the prices, you think, crikey, they were nearly that when they were new. But they've just been dragged up by that new market at the same time, because it all has a kind of an effect that brings it up with it. And so you don't have to go and buy a new caravan at £30,000, £50,000. You don't have to do that. You can spend £10,000 on a caravan, and it does exactly the same thing as the other one, the £50,000 new caravan. You tow it behind your car, you go to a site, you can sleep in it, it keeps your milk and your beer cold, and you can heat up a pizza in it, you can use the toilet and the shower in it. And then when you're out on the beach throwing a dog ball, or you're out walking, or you're visiting these lovely places that we got in the UK, it makes absolutely no difference what thing you've got back on the caravan site. It doesn't matter. So the issue I've always had with the UK caravan market, and I tried to explain this to the German friends when I was over there at Hobby, was that I think we have two different types of person that caravan. We have the holidaymaker, and then we have the caravaner. And the way we are in the UK is we get obsessed with things and we see it as a hobby, rather than a way of going out and enjoying the countryside and doing what we're doing. And when I was over in Germany, I was trying to explain that this is what I think is that most of the people over on the continent are the holiday maker, and they see the caravan as a way of getting out, going on holiday, and as long as it it's got a bed and it's got somewhere they can keep some milk cold, and whatever, then it's doing its job. It doesn't have to be a £50,000 Chelsea flat looking kind of thing that's towed behind their stunning car, and then sat in a cold wet field. As long as it done the job, then that was it. So a lot of the German stuff was a lot more basic than what we were saying. I think they're kind of catching up with us with now when you look at the German stuff. Yeah, that's the difference. Is you have the holiday maker and you have the caravaner, and the caravaner is an enthusiast, and they know just as much as the manufacturers do, and as we do as salespeople. And it's about going caravanning rather than going holidaying to a certain degree. Now you can berate me if you think I'm wrong, and I might well be, but I have been in sales for a long time, and I can tell when I've got someone who is the enthusiast, over and above someone who just says, look, can I get in it and can I go on holiday, and will it tow behind my car, and can I chuck it in a field somewhere? Yes, you can. Well, I'm not bothered about what that does, or having a touch screen fridge and printed circuit boards everywhere and all that kind of stuff. It used to be back in the day that the caravaner was the kind of person that didn't mind getting in and having a good old go at stuff. If the water pump didn't work, well, why not? What's going on? And part of the fun was fixing that water pump. Now, a reason that a lot of us get into fixing things is because that feeling of joy when you actually fix it and it starts working, and it's brilliant. It's frustrating up to that point, but when you use a certain set of criteria, if you've got something that isn't working and it should work, and there's a reason in the middle as why it's not working, and it could be four or five different things, where you start looking at those 4 or 5 different things and just ruling them out, and it's good fun doing that. Now, really, you're on holiday for the week. What you don't want to be doing is messing around with your caravan too much, and that's the problem now. Is they're too complicated. You need a degree in computer engineering and electrical engineering to understand the printed circuit boards and everything. Back in the day, you used to have a switch, a wire. You had a battery, you had 12 volts, and something had gone wrong, so your pump wasn't working. So it wasn't hard to work it out. But nowadays, you can. I've had an issue where we had a wire that had been put in the wrong one. There was because it's CAN bus system, and one wire can do several different things. It had, I think it was pink and purple, and it should have been purple and pink. And someone at the factory had done that. And so the lights were coming on and off when you turned the pump switch on, and vice versa, and it was all over the place. And trying to work out that to that degree, it took me about 4 days. But then you work it out, and then you just did that, and it all worked. And that was pretty euphoric, actually. It's pretty cool doing that. But 4 days, you don't want to be doing that on a caravan site. You want to spend an hour or two tatting around with it in the evening when you've got nothing to do, and get something fixed. So that's what it used to be like in the old days. Is you could fix these things, and nowadays you just can't. If a diode goes on a printed circuit board in the middle of a field somewhere, then it shuts everything down, and that's it, game over. You can't do anything with any of it. So again, there's lots and lots of different reasons why we're in the position we're in, and I think you could, so I can bang on about it for hours, and you probably get, probably a load of you have drifted off by now anyway. So it was just been going around in my head, and I thought I'd just kind of get it out there, and it's going to be interesting to see what you think. Again, as always, every time I do one of these videos and I get the comments and I read them, it kind of spurs me on to get my mind thinking when I'm out walking a dog or something. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. But getting back to the Elddis thing, hopefully they don't stop selling caravans. because I think they did have a recipe to be really good. If they do, then obviously Bailey and Swift and Coachman and everyone else has got a bigger slice of the pie, so hopefully that will help them. Just talking about Swift, there obviously I went to the factory and met Peter and spoke to the people there. I think I didn't see the same kind of data that I saw at Elddis, which was definitively yes, that's what's going on. But I got the feeling that that's the way it's going, and certainly the workforce. I've said this in the last video. Certainly the workforce were well behind the changes, and I think if you've got the workforce behind you, then you can that's where they start to actually invest in the products, and they start to bring things out. And like I said, I saw people craning their necks to try and say hello to Peter when he was walking around, and it's a real nice feeling of that. And I don't think that happened with the last group of people who I really massive respect for and everything, but I don't know, it just didn't seem the same kind of thing. Bailey, I can't mention. I don't know anything. I know the Howard brothers to say hello to, but I haven't been around the factory or anything like that. And all I can say about the Bailey stuff is that if they keep on making the Baileys without the composite floors underneath and the Alitech system that leaks, I can't see any way through that. With some of the other issues, you can see the way to resolve it. With the Alitech system, I've never been a huge fan of it, and I'm not sure whether you can stop it leaking or not. But they may well be well on that. I don't know. Put in the comments what you think if you've made it this far. It'll be again always interesting to see what you think. I don't think I've left anything else out what I was thinking about. I don't think so. So hopefully Elddis don't decide to stop making caravans, because I think it'd be really good. And hopefully the market stays where it is and doesn't reduce anymore. Otherwise, I think we're going to see some of the other manufacturers, now that Elddis have done this, they're going to look at it and go, hang on a minute, actually, is there any point carrying on making them? If it got much more below this 9,000 mark, as it starts dropping, you think, well, look, it's just not viable doing it. But we'll see. Hopefully that's not the case, because we all want the industry to be there. The industry always will be there, because there's all these second-hand caravans out there that are good, that you can play with. But if the manufacturer's backup kind of goes, then it's going to be harder to get parts. If something does go wrong, if their infrastructure isn't there, if they're not building those new caravans, then if you wanted to get a part, then they're going to become obsolete. Some of the things are becoming obsolete very early. They only have to, I think, legally have things around for 8 years. And you get to the year 9, and some of the manufacturers are stopping doing stuff and then making things, especially fridges at the moment, with having issues with fridges and things. So yeah, there you go. Let me know what you think, as always, and I will see you in the next video. If I can think of anything else to talk about, I will. Thank you very much. See you again.